Today, what I want to do is talk to you guys about how to actually silence your mind. And this is a question I get quite often in my DMs because a lot of people feel like they have a problem with the voice inside their head. And a big reason why I want to talk about this too is because yesterday I kind of went on a binge watch of watching a guy named Dr. David Hawkins. And Dr. David Hawkins has had a huge, huge impact on my life. He's the guy that wrote the book Power versus Force. He also wrote the book Letting Go, The Pathway to the Surrender. And those are two books that had a very, very profound effect on me, especially during I don't want to call it an awakening, but the first time I've ever experienced what it felt like to release myself, release my identity, to actually pull back from my ego. And this happened to me back during 2020, during the lockdown phase. And I remember very, very clearly. My girlfriend, at the time, she was an essential worker. And I was in the house all by myself. She was working. She went to work. And for whatever reason, I was stuck in the house and I was having this huge, huge panic attack. And I didn't understand why I was having this panic attack because everything was taken care of. Because at the time, this is back when they were giving out like $600 a week stimulus checks plus unemployment. And I was literally getting paid like $1,100 a week to do nothing. And my cost of living it wasn't $4,400 a month. It was like literally like $2,500 a month. And I used to think what caused my anxiety and what caused me to get super anxious was money and being around people. And to mask the idea of being around people, I learned how to perform. I learned how to develop all of these social skills, these persuasion tactics, especially me being a personal trainer. And somebody who worked for two big box gyms at the time where I always had to sell stuff, I knew how to move in a way that seemed like I had my shit together. But the truth was I was just masking everything. I was just hiding everything. Every time I had anxiety, I knew how to do these tactics. And at the time, I was really, really into like Tony Robbins, he was all about changing your state. And I didn't really understand anything about release work, awakening, even though I was a massage therapist too, and I've seen others do it, like particularly clients. It wasn't something that was very, very familiar to me. And I remember this day, it was probably like April of 2020, where I was stuck in the house, and it just finally just came to me where I was having all of this angst, all of this panic, that I just stopped resisting. And I allowed myself to experience whatever it was that was going on inside me to surface, not resist it. And as I did that, it was very, very painful. It really, really sucked. But all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it just started to flow through me. And it felt like years and years of trauma was just released. And I was very, very curious, like, what the hell just happened? And two people that really, really got me to become familiar with what was going on was Michael Singer, the author of The Untethered Soul, and Dr. David Hawkins. And I read his book, Power versus Force and Letting Go, The Pathway to Surrender. Now, the funny thing is, reading his work, Dr. David Hawkins' work, was really, really profound for me because it made me understand what was going on. However, when I would YouTube him, I would try to watch him speak. And I was only this was 6 years ago. I was only 30 at the time. So I'm a little older now. I would try to watch him speak. And every 45 seconds to a minute, he would start to giggle. He would start to laugh. And it actually would frustrate me because I was on a search to feel more at ease, feel more at peace. I was rushing the process. I wanted to get to a point where I could experience whatever it was that I experienced on that April of 2020, whatever that letting go experience happened. Because what happened is after I let go, I had that experience and I released what I felt like may have been years of trauma. The minute I went into everyday life, it started to like come back again. So I really, really wanted to figure out how I could replicate that on a day-to-day basis where I don't feel that heavy energy inside of me. I don't feel that voice in my head controlling me. And Dr. David Hawkins, his books really, really informed me on what was going on. However, when he would talk and he would giggle and he would laugh, I would try to watch like a 15-minute lecture of his. He would giggle every 45 seconds. I would get very, very impatient. But now that I've been doing this work for the last 6 years or so, when I watch him speak now, and I just started watching him speak again like 2 days ago, and the video that really, really got to me was the video of how to silence the mind. And if you guys are interested, just look it up on your Real section. Just type in Dr. David Hawkins, or just type in David Hawkins. And it's probably his most popular video on how to actually silence the mind. And the way he explains it with his giggle-like nature is so refreshing now that I'm a little bit older. And I understand why he was so giggly, because he was seriously, he was in a super state of just release, a state of surrender, a state of peace, that everything to him was just a joke. But somebody in the audience asked him, how do you silence the mind? And the way he explained it is so beautiful. I really, really suggest you watch it. But I'm going to do my best to say what he said. Basically, what he said was, in order for you to silence the mind, you have to realize that there's a payoff to thinking. The mind, the ego, has a job to do. The job is to protect this physical body, to keep you safe. It's always thinking about the past, or it's anticipating the future. So it's basically the job of the mind is to recognize patterns. That way, you're safe. Not that you feel at peace, not that you feel at ease, not that you feel happy, not that you feel love, just the fact that you're able to survive. And then what he said is realize that there's a payoff to thinking this. And if you want it to stop, you basically have to give up your will to survive. Meaning you have to be ready to die. You have to be ready to die. You have to be okay with dying. And what you basically got to do is say, hey, mind, you don't have to do this no more. I'm safe. I'm okay. But even if I'm not safe and even if I'm not okay, I'm okay with dying. And what happens is, when you start to say that you're okay with dying, a wave of trapped energy in your body is going to start to come up. And your job is to not resist it. And then when you don't resist it, what you do is you allow it to flow. And then over time, what you basically do is start learning how to surrender it to God. And what David Hawkins explained in that video, he basically said, what you got to do is surrender it to God and tell God to take care of you. Because, and he says it very, very funnily, because we didn't ask to be here. God, we did not ask to be here. So it's your responsibility to take care of me. And the way he explains it is so, so funny. He's like, give the responsibility to God. Trust that God got your back. And when you trust that God got your back, the ego naturally starts to quiet down. The mind starts to quiet down. And you start to really, really know what it's like to surrender. And there's been times in my life where I've experienced this, and I'm sure you have, particularly while drinking. I haven't drunk alcohol in maybe about 16 years, and I've only been drunk maybe 3 times in my life. But one of the things I do remember about getting drunk is that I remember all of us being drunk, me and my friends. And I remember all 3 times that I was drunk. I've only been drunk 3 times in my life, and it's been about 16 years. And it was all before the age of like 21. I do remember saying to myself, if I died today, I would be fine with that. And this was at the age of 20, 21 maybe. This is why we get drunk. This is why we get high, because this is why we have sex. This is why we get addicted to whatever it is we get addicted to, gambling. Because when we do all of this stuff, what happens is the thinking mind stops thinking and we're just totally being. And the easiest way to be is to learn how to surrender and just drop yourself into your body. And when you drop yourself into your body, this is why I love this page, the somatic stretching page. Because, the goal of the stretches don't really do anything but get you aware of the body. And you stop thinking just for a second. You learn how to pause. And when you learn how to do this, and I remember those times being drunk, the amount of peace I felt, the amount of ease I felt, even though I was like kind of sick, I felt so relaxed, so loose. I wasn't thinking. The heaviness that I had, that I've been carrying around, was gone. And this is what David Hawkins means when he says, you have to be okay with dying. So my question to you right now, ask yourself internally, am I okay with dying right now? Like if I died right now, what would happen? And the minute you start to ask yourself this question, images are going to start to pop up. You're going to think about, like imagine right now, you're dead, gone. Who's coming to your funeral? What are they going to be saying about you? And all of this stuff that they might be saying about you, all of these things that you're thinking about right now, realize it doesn't matter. You're dead. And when you start to come from that frame that, hey, I could die right now. I could be dead right now. And it's okay. And you start speaking to your ego in a way where you just say, hey, are we willing to die right now? Are we willing to let go? Are we willing to surrender? And to be honest with you, when we start to be okay with dying, that's when we feel our most safest. That's when we feel that actual peace, a sense of serenity that all of us are searching for. So again, how do you silence the mind? Realize that the reason why we're thinking so much, the reason why the mind is thinking so much, it's not so much that we're thinking. It's that the mind has a job to do. The mind is trying to stay alive. It's trying to keep this physical body safe. But if you realize that you're more than this physical body, if you realize that you're more than your thoughts, if you realize that you're the consciousness, the energy behind all of that, and start to allow yourself to pull back from it and just observe everything, it starts to get really, really quiet. It starts to feel so peaceful. This is how we honestly return back to the Garden of Eden. For those of you that have read the Bible, the story of Adam and Eve, what did Adam and Eve eat from? They ate from the tree of good and evil. And I like to define it as the tree of labels. What does that mean, the tree of labels, the tree of good and evil? They ate from the tree of good and evil, the tree of labels. What happens is once you start to eat from that tree, that basically means what you're starting to develop is something called preferences. You have an identity. You start to label things as good and bad. And you start to develop a personality that's separate from everything else. You start to look at yourself as separate from everything else. Like right now, in 2026, humans, we're having an identity crisis. We all have preferences, things that we want to happen, and we believe reality is supposed to be the way we want it to be. Like I often make jokes that our nervous system actually believes that we're God. Our ego actually believes that we're God, and things have to happen the way that we want them to go. And if it doesn't go the way we want them to go, our nervous system starts to send us signals, which is negative emotions. And once we start to develop these negative emotions inside of us, what we try to do to make ourselves feel better is we try to go outside into the world and try to manipulate, grip, control, make things happen the way that we want them to happen. That way we could feel comfortable inside. So going back to the Garden of Eden, the story of Adam and Eve. They ate from the tree of labels, the tree of good and evil. They immediately immediately realized that they were naked. They became aware of themselves. This is the birth of the ego. They became aware of themselves. And if you remember, when God came looking for Adam, he's like, Adam, where are you? Adam was hiding. And he's like, Adam, where are you? And Adam told him, I was hiding. Adam said, God said, why are you hiding? And what did Adam say? Do you guys remember? He said, because I was naked. And God said, who told you that you was naked? This is the birth of the ego. This is the birth of the thinking mind. This is the birth of separation. We start to separate ourselves. We don't see ourselves as one with everything. And in order for us to return back to the garden, we have to learn how to step behind the noise of the mind. And how do we silence the mind? How do we step behind it? We have to be okay with dying. This is what is meant when Jesus said you have to die to be reborn. He's not actually talking about the physical body. He's talking more about your identity, because right now we all try to identify with something. It's kind of like the equivalent of like using a knife. And if you ever use a knife to cut something, like let's say you're using a knife to cut an onion or something, if you don't wash that knife off, what happens? Residue comes onto the knife. And then what happens is if you go cut a slice of turkey, what happens is now the onion is on the turkey. And if you don't constantly release that residue, because we all start to identify with things. That's the residue that we carry inside of us. Like me, if you look at me, I'm a man, Chinese. I got long hair. I post on Instagram. If this is the stuff I really, really identify with, this is where my suffering starts. If you look at Buddhism, the Four Noble Truths that Buddha came up with, the first noble truth was life is suffering. And he's not talking about physical suffering. He's talking about psychological suffering. The second noble truth that Buddha came up with was the cause of suffering, which is desire, craving, or, as I would call it, preference. We have a preferred way we want reality to be based off our likes and our dislikes. And if we could just learn to just give that stuff up, just to be okay with this present moment. Like, ask yourself again right now, are you okay with dying? And if something comes up inside of you, weird emotions, sit with it. Allow it to pass through. It's painful. It sucks. This is basically what it means to be kind of like, metaphorically speaking, crucified. Jesus died for our sins, right? We have to crucify ourselves. We have to let go of our identity. We have to let go of our wants, our desires, and just learn to be. And when we learn to just be, this is when the cup, your cup of energy starts to actually overflow. Because a lot of times when, I tell people to learn to just to be one with everything, they start to say things like, well, then that means I'm not going to do anything. No. Because you're overflowing with so much energy when you start practicing this, releasing your ego, releasing your mind, being still, you're going to have so much energy that you're just going to do things because it's just something to do. And you're going to be given. You're going to be so given. You're going to be a true person of service. So, to wrap this up, how to silence the mind, as David Hawkins would say, I would suggest you watch his video. It's on Instagram if you're watching Instagram right now. Be okay with dying. Realize there's a payoff to thinking this. Realize that you're okay. Realize that you're safe. And if you're okay with dying in this present moment, your mind will actually quiet down. So, that's the video. I only got a few seconds left. Leave feedback.